Good afternoon, everyone. It is Saturday, June the 13th, 2020. It is currently 1:30 p.m. Central Time, and I'm coming to you live from Victory Baptist Church located here in Ovalo, Texas. Now, what did you do last night? What was on your agenda? What did you do? Did you do anything for fun? Did you do anything? Did you have a lot of responsibilities? What did you do? Well, for me, last night I got together with some individuals and we sat down and we watched the new movie that was debuting on Disney Plus. You've probably heard about it. All of the reviews are in. All of the reviews are extremely negative. I saw one review saying one of the worst movies they have ever seen. I've seen reviews giving it an F minus. If they could find letters below an F, they would give it. There's been lots of criticism of the movie. You probably know what movie I'm talking about. Artemis Fowl. Artemis Fowl is a new movie that debuted yesterday on Disney Plus. And there has been lots of controversy around this movie, lots of criticism. If you don't know Artemis Fowl, it's a movie on Disney Plus that's based off a series of books that were very popular. I think back in like 2001, maybe 2002. And of course, when you make a movie based off a beloved series of books, a series of books that were very popular, unless you follow that very closely, if you deviate in any way, shape, or form, people are going to get upset. People are going to get mad. They're going to scream. They're going to call for justice. They're going to call for everything to be burnt down because they wanted the movie to be like the book. Now, my philosophy is very different. My philosophy is book is one form of storytelling. All right. It tells a story a certain way. Your interaction with a book is very different than your interaction with a movie. If you read a book, just think about what's happening. You're reading words and your mind is creating the images. Your mind is creating the scene. Your mind is creating that. You're taking what's on the written page, but your mind is creating what you see. And and then you react. You have an emotional reaction to the images that you see in your mind. A good example for this is the first, I don't know how many times I read the Tom Sawyer. I don't know how many times I read that book, but when I read that book, I was growing up in a little small town in Texas, called Buffalo Gap. And for some reason, when I read that book, in my mind, the town resembled the town I lived in, this little small town, and certain places they would go. I kind of filled in the images of places that I went to play and places I went to explore there in West Texas in this little town called Buffalo Gap. A completely different image. The first time I saw a movie of Tom Sawyer, the way they pictured the town, it almost like, well, that's not the way I saw it. Now, the way the movie depicted it may have been more closer to what the book was intending, but the point is I had a certain reaction to the book because of how I pictured it. When you read a book, you're creating the image and the scene, and your emotions are based a lot off that. And so when that book is then translated over or transferred over into a movie, now the visuals are the visuals of someone else. In many cases, it doesn't feel the same, doesn't feel right. And so sometimes we can't even put a finger on it, but we don't like it because it doesn't feel the same. It doesn't look the same. And it can't capture it. And the way you engage the written word is far different than the way you engage a visible medium. So my thinking is this, my philosophy is this. If I've read a book and they're going to make a movie, when I go into that movie, this is what I do. I forget the book. I just ignore the book. I don't even care that the book existed. I feel like I'm going to watch something completely different. This is the way I say it. It's based off the book. Maybe the story's the same. Maybe the story's not. I don't care. What I'm looking for is a good movie. I'm not looking for a good book because it's not a book. I'm looking for a good movie. I don't care if it follows the story, changes the story. I don't care because guess what? It's not the book. If I want to read the story that's in the book, I'll go read the story in the book. If I'm going to watch a movie, I'm going to watch a movie. Give me a good movie. Give me an entertaining movie. I know that's anathema to many people who love books and they want those books turned into movies. And they want to see on the screen what they saw in the book. And I don't hold to that. I don't feel like I'm bound by that. So my approach is always different. So if I go see a movie based off a book, everybody like, it was different here, and it was different here, and it was different here, and it was different here. And I'm always like, I don't care how different it was. All I care about was the movie entertaining. All right. So immediately that's going to put me at odds with the Artemis Fowl fans. I don't know what Artemis Fowl fans are called. I don't know. Whatever you are called. Okay. So I had some knowledge of the book, but I can't say that I was like some big Artemis Fowl fan. I think I've read one of them, maybe two of them. I don't remember. That's a long time ago. I don't remember. So when the movie was coming out, who cares? Who cares? I don't care what the book was. So I sat down to watch the movie. All right. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use one of the major kind of a plot device, one of the main elements of the plot, I guess we could say that. I'm going to take that to really move it to a different discussion, but I'll give you some basic feelings for the movie. If you don't know, basically, I'm going to make it very simple. I'm not trying to be very detailed here, and my goal here is not to give you every, explanation of the movie, but simply put, Artemis Fowl. You have Artemis Fowl Sr., the father, and Artemis Fowl Sr., the father, is one who collects, I guess, very important artifacts. He may steal some of these artifacts, but if he steals them because he's trying to protect everyone else, because these artifacts and these different things that he takes have a power that he doesn't want to fall into the wrong hands. Now, this really sets up this idea of power. All right. And from a philosophical point, I always find that interesting in movies. Like, here's this power. They can't have it, but we can have it because we know how to handle it and they don't. As if, okay, well, we'll get into that. But all right. So Artemis Fowl Sr., the father, he gets all of these artifacts. He steals. And at the very beginning of the movie, he's been accused of stealing all of these things, and all of this stuff is going on. Well, to make a long story short, Artemis Fowl Sr., the father, he gets kidnapped. All right. He gets kidnapped. And Artemis Fowl Jr., the son, he gets a phone call from the kidnapper, this mysterious, creepy, sinister villain kind of person with a green light pointing to its face, basically says, you've got 30 days to recover the Oculus. The Oculus. You get the Oculus, you bring it to me, and then I will release your father. All right. So that's the basic premise. All right. So the son has to figure out what the Oculus is, where the Oculus is, how to get it, how to obtain it. And then you're going to bring, and the movie has all of these elements of magic and fairies and Artemis Fowl Jr. is going to have to basically kidnap this fairy because he got to use this fairy in order to be able to get the Oculus. And then there's a lot of action. There's a lot of adventure. There are some major flaws in the movie. The movie's only like an hour and 30 minutes long. And so they really cut out explanations, right? Like there are things that happen that you're like, wait, I don't really know why that's happening or why that's not happening. Like, okay, why, like, I won't give it away, but like in this one scene, they use this like time stopping device. And the one scene, everything within the time stopping device seems to come to a stop other than those who enter in. But in the other scene where they use it, all the people within the time stopping device, they all seem to still be moving. So it was a little confusing and I never really got an explanation. There were a couple of things that didn't really like. And I guess in book terminology, when you're writing the book, you're world building. You build the world, how the world operates, what are the rules, and then as things play out, you if you don't understand, you go back to how the explanation earlier in the book. Well, I felt that the movie didn't offer some explanations. So there were times that things were happening like that doesn't seem to make any sense. So in that sense, the movie wasn't awesome there. The young boy, I think he was 12 when he played the role of Artemis Fowl. Some criticize, his acting is not great. I think there's like, what kind of character is he trying to demonstrate? He's trying to demonstrate an arrogant, cocky, condescending kind of a jerk, but yet he's supposed to be the good guy that we're kind of rooting for. Like on one hand, his personality he demonstrates is not very likable, and you're not like drawn to Artemis Fowl, Jr. We're really going for him. There's a part of you that kind of like, well, he's kind of a condescending, arrogant little jerk. But at the same time, he's supposed to be the good guy. But I guess in the books, he wasn't really the good guy. So it's this really weird, like, what? I don't really get it. Now, some of the other characters are much more likable, and you're much more on their side. But bottom line is, a father is kidnapped, and the son has to rescue him. And the way he has to rescue him is find this mysterious device, the Oculus. The Oculus. Now, when I was watching the movie, if you do not know how I watch movies and all I think about is, what's the message? What's the meaning? What's the message? What could this point to? Is there a lesson? And I just kept coming back to the Oculus device, this Oculus thing, this thing. And let me just give you a little information about the Oculus. I've got some notes here that I took so that you can kind of get an idea. The Oculus, if you don't know how it is spelled, A-C-U-L-O-S, Oculus. A-C-U-L-O-S. This is a quote from one of the lines in the movie. Speaking of the Oculus, it's real. It's perfect. The Oculus, the most powerful treasure in the fairy world. All right. Now I want you to understand that the Oculus is this device that Artemis Fowl Jr. has to find. He has to get this because the bad guy wants it. And the reason the bad guy wants it is because it's the most powerful treasure in the fairy world. Some more information about the Oculus. The Oculus was an extremely valuable treasure of the people. It was said to be a skeleton key for the universe, which could open portals between worlds. The Oculus, a weapon so powerful and mysterious, it can barely be imagined, as one of the characters describe it in the movie. All right. So to be precise, it's a magic item capable of teleporting people or objects from any point on the globe. All right, any point on the globe. So it's this thing of, we can almost say this, to have the Oculus is to have absolute power. To have it, to have absolute power. Now, where is the Oculus? Where is it? I don't want to give it away, but let's just say that the person who had it was someone who thought that it needed to be kept away from the wrong people, but that assumes that the person who took it was the right person. But this gets into a discussion about it. Now, there's something I have to say about the Oculus, all right? Because the Oculus in the movie, basically, this is something that is used in movies. I think it's used movies is the first thought that comes to my mind. It's probably a literary device used in a lot of things. But let's see if you've ever heard this term, Macguffin. A Macguffin. Have you ever heard the term Macguffin? All right. The Oculus in this movie is a Macguffin. The term Macguffin, it was first developed by an English screenwriter, and then it was made popular by Alfred Hitchcock. A Macguffin refers to an item in a story which has little to no point in and of itself, but it exists solely to be the object of desire for the characters. Example of the Macguffins and other stories includes the Holy Grail, the Philosopher's Stone, and the Ark of the Covenant. All right. So the Holy Grail, Philosopher's Stone, it's an object that it's only there. It doesn't really have any other point. The only reason it exists is to be an object of desire for the characters. This is the thing that they desire. This is the thing that they go after. So as a result, these things are sometimes referred to as a Macguffin. But I tend to look at it from a different perspective. I think sometimes the object and the pursuit of it serves as a greater meaning or a greater message. Because I think in the movie Artemis Fowl, and I'm not saying this was the intention of the director or the screenwriters or anyone involved with the movie, but from a symbolic way, the Oculus, to me, demonstrated the desire for power. The desire to control power, the desire to say who should have the power, and the desire for the power. It's all about this pursuit of No, I'm going to take this so they don't get it, or I want it. Everyone wants control of the power, which then gives a greater philosophical meaning about the pursuit of power, the pursuit of authority, the pursuit of some type of level of living that other people do not experience. All right? So I just want you to know that some see it as a MacGuffin. Now, when it comes to the idea of the oculus and power, I want you to really think about this, because this is really what I want you to get from this discussion. Absolute power. Now, I'm leaving the oculus. The oculus is just the symbolic idea of power in the movie. That's what I see it as. And that's what I'm going to use it as. This idea. Here's the oculus. Let's talk about power, right? Absolute power leaves no aspect of life untouched. In authoritarian societies, power becomes the end and the means to the end. The result is that everything in the public arena is manipulated towards maintaining the status quo. This leads to a form of political stability that you could probably more appropriately call a stagnation. Now, I want you to think about that. Absolute power leaves no aspect of life untouched. And in an authoritarian society, power becomes the end and the means to the end. It becomes the end and the means to the end. The result is that everything in the public arena is manipulated towards maintaining the status quo. This leads to a form of political stability, but it might be more appropriately called stagnation. Now, when I think about this, I see this a lot in our culture today when it comes to politicians and politics. Politics is not about serving the people and doing what's right for the people. Politics is about obtaining power, keeping power through manipulation, giving promises, doing whatever you have to do in order to keep yourself in power. It does provide a resemblance of stability for society, but it's all about power structure, staying in place. You know, the two-party system. And I don't care if it's a Republican, I don't care if it's a Democrat. They want power. And they want to use you to get the power, so they manipulate you to keep giving them the power. They manipulate you by trying to act like, look, there's the evil people. You give us power, you give us the oculus, and then we will set you free from all that bad stuff. So first of all, in politics, you have to have a politician who first creates the enemy that they need to save you from. And then the only way they can save you is if you give them the power, you give them the oculus, and then they will set you free. That's the way politics work. There's the bad guys. And if they can convince you the bad guys are bad enough, then you're going to hand them over the oculus to set you free from the bad things. Now, again, from a theological perspective, we've talked about this a lot. Politics is not going to save you. Politics is not going to ultimately be the problems, fix the problems. And that power you give them, listen, is only going to benefit them. It's not going to benefit you. Because our problems, I believe, are spiritual. But I just see a good parallel there. Here's the bad guy in the movie. Hey, I've got your father. You give me the oculus and I'll let you go free. Okay, now transfer that over to politicians. Politicians point to go, see those bad people? They're going to destroy you. They're going to destroy your country. They're going to destroy your freedoms. They're going to take this from you. They're going to starve your children. They're going to kill your grandparents. They're going to do all this. So you've got to paint your opposition in the most villainous way possible. And once you paint them in the most villainous light possible, then guess what you do? You say, now give me the oculus. And what does that mean? Re-elect me. Elect my party. We will have the power. And then they get the power. And then, I mean, just think about this from especially from a Christian perspective. How many times a politician said, abortion, isn't it evil? Well, Christians obviously believe abortion is evil. See how evil it is? See how evil it is? It's destroying babies. It's destroying babies. Now, you know what? Give us the power and we'll get rid of it. Well, look at how many Republicans have been president since the Roe v. Wade, and it's still present, it's still legal, and it's still happening. No one has declared an executive order, let's just get rid of it. I'm stopping it. I'm banning it. No, it hasn't happened. Create, all you got to do is create the problem. And even if they have no intention of actually doing anything about the problem, all they do is show you the villain, and then you're willing to hand over the Oculus. You're going to go find the Oculus and you're going to put them in power. It's the same concept. The movie, yes, it's a Disney movie more for kids than adults, but the concept is there and it's very real. All right, let's go to a very famous saying. You know this saying. Power tends to corrupt. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. Power tends to corrupt, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. Now, why does power corrupt? It corrupts because it gives license to unconsciousness and neglect. It corrupts because it licenses individuals to unilaterally, unreflectively, and thus arbitrarily impose their will on others. It licenses individuals to impose their will without having properly engaged and processed through the reality at hand. Power inflates the ego, and through it, the ego is erroneously led to believe it has the power to make people, ideas, and even reality itself disappear without due process. In the big picture, nothing is further from the truth. Power corrupts because it gives license to unconsciousness, and in so doing, it not only destroys the growth opportunity of the victim of such imposition, but no less the growth opportunity of the victimizer. Failure to engage another in consciousness not only does the other individual harm, but it no less does serious harm to oneself. For in both cases, the precocious opportunity to extend consciousness by the way of self-organizing nature is altogether lost and corrupted. By way of power, you corrupt. By way of power, you are corrupted. By way of absolute power, you absolutely corrupt. By way of absolute power, you become absolutely corrupted. Let me read that again. That's a very important quote. By way of power, you corrupt. By way of power, you are corrupted. By way of absolute power, you absolutely corrupt. And by way of absolute power, you become absolutely corrupted. Now, if you think about it in the movie, Artemis Fowl has to get the Oculus because he's got to save his father. He's got to save his father. And because he's got to get this power, then he utilizes whatever power he has because he's smart and he has all of these advantages that he has because his father left him with all this stuff. And he ultimately, he kidnaps a young girl who's a fairy in the movie. He kidnaps her because he has the power to do so. And he uses his power. Now, he thinks he's using his power in a good way, but is he using his power in a way that ultimately corrupts him and then corrupts others? Don't know. Does power then affect the unconscious or unleashes the unconscious that you don't even realize what you're doing? It inflates the ego so that you can no longer see reality, and therefore you can justify everything because, you have the power and you have the ability. This idea of power is, I think the Oculus, even though it's a Macguffin in some ways, that this is just the thing they're questing, I think it serves as a greater symbol of an issue that we all struggle with. So I'm going to look at this from a more biblical perspective, all right? Because I think it's interesting, all right? Longings and striving for power, status, fame, and recognition is a common feature of everyday life. Let's be honest with ourselves. We have longings for power, status, fame, and recognition. It is regarded as normal by the world. People of the world give much attention to attaining power, status, fame, and recognition. This problem is seen in all strata of society and in many different areas of life. So let me ask you, from a Christian perspective now, how much do you long for power, for status, for fame, and recognition? Now, I'm not talking about, you want to be famous and you want the world to know you, but you can strive for power in your own home, amongst your own family. You want to be in charge. You want your will imposed on others. You want some kind of status. You want some kind of fame. You want recognition. You want to be recognized for what you do. This can happen in the church. This can happen in the home. This can happen in the place of employment. All right? And just think in the political arena. All right? The corridors of history are littered with much destruction, pain, and suffering because of the unrestrained lust for power and glory. Often this lust goes together with abuse of power, corruption, and greed for material gains. This can take place among small groups of people as well as whole nations embroiled in bitter conflicts and devastating wars. These hostilities and clashes may arise from the ambitions of a few dictators and their followers. Thousands and millions suffer and die because of the tyrannical rule and the whims and fancies of these leaders. In many countries, there seems to be unending political and social instability due to the constant jostling for power and all kinds of political intrigues. I will say, look, I think politics is all about power. You can say whatever you want, but look, that's the whole problem with not having term limits. We'll move this back to the political world for a second. Look, they get elected. Next thing you know, they have to start worrying about getting reelected. So they make decisions in order to gain power, to get the oculus, to keep the oculus, to using the Artemis Fowl analogy. All right. So it's definitely present in the political world. In the workplace, we see this in the workplace as well. Why do people strive and work so hard in their workplace? A common reason is worldly motivations. They want to gain a certain position or status where they could wield authority, gain recognition, and enjoy a sense of prestige. They think that when they reach that position, they could do what they wish and gain many other things they crave for. Rivalry, envy, jealousy abound when one strives for recognition and status. People engage in office politics and resort to reprehensible tactics and strategies to gain an upper hand. Office politics affects many people, even those who do not wish to be a part of it. At times, it can cause much difficulty to those who simply want to be responsible and do an honest day's work. It's very present in the work world. Very present. People want to be recognized. They want position. They want power. They want more. They want this. They want that. They want this, that. Again, from a Christian perspective, that is all a worldly thing. But Christians, we fall right into that. Christians want that. They long for that because, look, that position, that power gives them a sense of worth and value. For the Christian world, we are not to get our sense of value and worth from our position and from our power and from our recognition, but from our identity in Christ. This is a complete different mindset. We want the oculus. We want the power. We want the control. We want the recognition. We want the fame. And we'll do whatever it has to do to get it. We will chase it. People will chase it. Look, okay, I'm going to try this. Well, that's not really popular. Let me go try that. Oh, now I got some popularity. Okay, this is what I'm going to do. This is me now. Is it you because it's you, or is it you because you wanted power, position, prestige, and recognition? Very different approach. This shows up in school. The problematic area also exists in schools. Some students may not be very clear why they're studying very hard, but often underlying their aim to excel in their studies is the unhealthy desire for recognition, fame, and adulation. This also extends to sports and extracurricular activities in school. We do so much, not because we love what we do, but because we love the adulation, the power, the fame, the recognition, that we do so much for that. That's what's driving us. We've got to know our motivations. This problem also exists among Christians and those engaged in the Lord's work. This, in fact, is a major problem. It is a significant hindrance to personal growth and development and to personal walk and fellowship with God. It also causes considerable problems and hindrances to the advancement of God's kingdom. This is an area the evil one is actively promoting and exploiting. It is possible for a person to have the problem without himself realizing it, even when he has been even when it has been damaging his life. And some people, this problem is deep-seated. Let us soberly examine our lives and ask the Lord to help us free us from this problem. It happens in the church. It happens everywhere. People want power. People want prestige. People want recognition. That's what they want. I've tried. I can't say I've always succeeded, but I know that this desire is there. So I would do things like, as a pastor, I'm not putting my name on the sign. I don't put my name on the website. I don't have a bio about me. I try not to even mention my name on my podcast. I don't want it to ever be about me. It's not about me. It's not about me. It's not about me. It's not about my fame. It's not about me. I don't want to be known. I want my podcast to be known for its content, not for me. I'm aware of that. And I'm not saying I've always handled it well, but yeah, the Oculus, we want the power. Now, let's turn this to a scriptural conclusion, all right? Because I think this is important, all right? Jesus obviously spent a lot of time with his apostles, with his disciples, but it was clear that this desire for power was still present in them, even just before Jesus went to the cross. And at the end of 3 years that he had spent with them, even at the end of 3 years in the apostles, there was still this desire for power. Look at Luke chapter 22. Luke chapter 22. I want to make sure that in my notes, give me a second here. Luke chapter 22. I want to make sure that I wrote down the right scripture reference. Luke chapter 22. Yes, Luke chapter 22. I do have it there, all right? Luke chapter 22. I'm gonna pull this up from the King James, I think. Luke chapter 22 and verse 21, all right? Luke chapter 22, verse 21. Jesus is getting very close to being arrested and going to be crucified. And look what Jesus says. Truly, the Son of Man goeth as it were, what was determined, but woe unto the man by whom he is betrayed. So Jesus is telling them, hey, it's about to happen, about to be betrayed. All of these things are going to happen. Verse 23, and they, speaking of the apostles and disciples, they begin to inquire among themselves which of them it was that should do this thing. And there was also a strife among them, which of them should be accounted greatest. Now, Jesus is trying to get them prepared that he's about to go and die. He's trying to tell them we're about to go and die. But guess what power does? Guess what the lust for power does? It destroys. You can't even perceive reality. It unleashes this unconscious thing. Once you have this lust and desire for power and prestige, you can't even see when someone right there in front of you is suffering. All you can see is yourself. That's all you can see is yourself. When you become consumed with power, position, and recognition, all you see is yourself, and you see other people only as they will benefit your lust for power, position, and recognition. Other people are only tools for your use. Jesus is going to die, and they're sitting there worrying about, wait, which one of us is the greatest? I'm the greatest. No, you're not the greatest. I'm going to be the greatest. They start worrying about which one is the greatest. And look what happens here. Verse 25, Jesus said unto them, the kings of the Gentiles exercise lordship over them, and they that exercise authority upon them are called benefactors. So he's like, okay, guys, wait. The Gentile world, like we'll use this that was a common way it was used in the Bible to refer to the unbelieving world. Hey, in the unbelieving world, look, they exercise lordship. They exercise authority. That's what the world wants, power and authority. But this is what he says in verse 26. But you shall not be so. But he that is greatest among you, let him be as the younger, and he that is chief as he that doth serve. I want you to hear that. Jesus is like, that's not the way you're to think. That's the way the world thinks, arguing about power and position and recognition. No. Not for you. It's not to be so. But he that is greatest among you, let him be as the younger, and he that is chief as he that doth serve. A very powerful reminder here. All right? And I just want you to see that, all right? Man. From a scriptural perspective, true greatness goes together with true humility, right? True greatness is those who humble themselves. True greatness is humbling yourself, not seeking power, position, and recognition, but being a servant, humbling yourself, thinking of others as greater than yourself. The key to greatness from the spiritual perspective, from a spiritual perspective, we don't go after earthly power and position and recognition. We humble ourselves because we must decrease, that he must increase, that Christ must increase. We have to lose our lust for power and our desire for it. We have to lose our desire for recognition. We have to lose our desire for fame. We have to humble ourselves and say, look, I take up the cross, die to self. Death to self, servant to all, right? Decreasing so Christ may increase. That it's dying to your own desires, your own desire for lust, your own lust for power and position. We don't care about our power and our position. We care about the power and position of God being glorified and honored. It's a radical different way of living. Sadly, we're no different than everyone else. We want the Oculus. We want the Oculus, and we want people to bring me the Oculus. Bring it to me. Give me the power. Give me the recognition. Give me the fame. We're right there with the world. Look, I think Christians are better at of not using certain terms. Like we may not say, well, I got to look out for number one because no one else is. We may not say that as a Christian. We know how to take our words and disguise them as being spiritual, but in the disguise of being spiritual, we still want position, we still want power, we still want recognition because it's an inherent lust inside of us because of our sinful nature. When we talk about Satan, we always discuss the possibility that the passage in Isaiah is referring to Satan, and then we typically say that describes the fall of Satan, where he says, I'm going to ascend over God. I'm going to ascend over his throne. He wanted the power. He wanted the position. Well, that same attitude is in you and me because of our sinful nature. We want power. We want position. Using the idea from Artemis Fowl, we want the Oculus. We want it. And we'll use anything to get it. So today, let me ask you, do you demonstrate a humble spirit? Do you demonstrate the attitude of someone who's willing to serve all, that you are the servant of all, that you don't see yourself as trying to be the master, you're trying to be the servant. You're not trying to be the greatest, you're trying to be the least. You're not striving for power, you're surrendering power. You're thinking of others greater than yourself, or how much is controlled by a desire for self to be exalted, a desire for self to be followed, a desire for self to be recognized, and a desire for self to possess some kind of fame. Are you pursuing things because you pursue things, or do you pursue things because of what you want to get from it, which deals with this idea of power? All right, I'll stop right there. There's a lot more I could say. I did do, there was a section that I was reading earlier that I wasn't super happy with how I read it, but hopefully I got the point across to the best of my ability. There you have it. Artemis Fowl, now streaming on Disney Plus, hour and 30-something minutes. Not a perfect movie, by no means. There's definitely some problems with it. It definitely is not the book. Okay, it's not a million. It's a million miles somewhere else. All right, it's not the book. Okay, so don't go into it. It's got some action in it. There's some, I don't know. There's some issues with it. There's no question about it. Yeah, the young boy. I think that it was like, I don't know. I think he didn't really know what kind of character he was supposed to display. I think on one hand, they were trying to display maybe the character of the book, which he comes across as bad. But here they want to make him more sympathetic, but he still demonstrated some of the characteristics that would make him bad. So it's really not a very sympathetic character. You feel bad that his father was kidnapped, but yeah, there's a lot of problems in it. There's no question about it. It's not. I wouldn't want to go pay money to go see it in a theater, but if you already have Disney Plus, it's not hurting you to watch it. Clean, pretty much. There's no sex, there's no nudity. And there's no, major explicit language. It's pretty straightforward, a Disney movie. So if you've got children, talk about it, but then talk about the desire for power, the Oculus. What's your Oculus? right? What is the thing you're striving for? Is it power? Is it recognition? Is it fame? How are you using that desire? How does your life reflect your desire for, quote unquote, the oculus, using that as a symbol? That's what we're pursuing. We can say I'm pursuing a career because I want to leave something. Are you pursuing a career because you really are trying to do good for your family, or pursuing it because you want power, prestige, recognition? Like there's things you want. Are you pursuing a life of being a servant, a life of humility, a life of putting others before yourself? What are you really doing? So something to think about. I thought I would use it that way today, and hopefully someone will benefit from it. All right, I'll stop right there. You can email me at newsif@yahoo.com, newsif@yahoo.com, newsif@yahoo.com. All right, I'll stop there. Everyone have a great day. God bless.